And a very good morning to everybody joining us here for episode 5 of Cyber Uncovered. I'm Kerrie Machin. I am Head of Business Development here at Mitigo. I'm joined by Tristan. Tristan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tristan Hodgson. I'm the Head of Service Delivery at Mitigo, and I've also been a Cyber Essentials auditor for the best part of 10 years now.
Excellent, thank you very much indeed. And it would appear for some reason I can't share the slide deck, which is a great start. Tristan, I'm just wondering if you're able to do that.
I should be able to.
So bear with us, everybody. Great start. Sorry about that.
No, I don't seem to be able to. Hang on.
All good things when we go live. It was all. Oh, I think I can do it now, Tristan. I think I can see the. I can see it. There we go. Thanks very much. There's someone in the background, Colleen, helping us out there. So just give us a sec, and we shall get going. Okay, so today is about cyber essentials, and the critical question is it enough? Is it going to help you stay safe? Is it going to help you align yourself with your legal and regulatory requirements? And what actually is it going to do for you? And we'll help to go through what it will do, and then I think what it won't do. A little bit about Mitigo. If you've never joined us before, who we are. I always start by telling people what we're not. So we are not an IT company. We are a cyber risk management firm, and we work with all manner of industries and sectors, but we do work quite a lot within the professional services sector. So you can see there that we are partners with a lot of organisations and regulators within the legal sector, within the accountancy sector, and then also throughout the financial services sector. And we also work in construction related organisations as well. So we've got the Royal Institute of British Architects there, and there are others. As you can well imagine, there are all manner of accreditations and certifications that we need to achieve and hold in order to be able to deliver our services to organisations, and you can see those along the bottom there. So that's probably enough about who we are. Hopefully our expertise will come across as we start talking today. So the agenda for today, as I've mentioned, we are going to talk about Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. There is an update that's come along, which if you've already got the certification and you're due to renew that in the upcoming future, then you'll need to know what it is you're going to need to be doing. But then it's to sort of understand where this really sits within your own cyber risk strategy, and then obviously to try and understand what those gaps would be and what it's not going to address. So i.e., what are the blind spots that are going to be left behind that may leave you open to some form of cyber attack. We're also going to look at what regulators, the government, insurers and clients are expecting that's beyond the certification, and then obviously what, if you've already got it or you're considering doing it, what the next steps might be for building on your cyber essentials foundation. So that's quite an action-packed agenda, and it's over to Tristan as he's going to start talking a bit about cyber essentials. So over to you.
Thank you, Kerrie. So Cyber Essentials, I imagine quite a lot of people on the call will know about it already, but just for those who have come along to understand what this really is. So Cyber Essentials, it is a government scheme, so it is backed by the NCSC. It's a scheme that's been around now for coming up to 12 years. I think it was 2014 when it came about. And the goal of the scheme today is the same goal of the scheme 12 years ago. It is designed to be the minimum standard of cybersecurity recommended by the government. So it is for organizations of all sizes, but if in all honesty, it is aimed at the sort of the SME market to give them something to work towards to implement that sort of minimum standard. The scheme itself is aligned to 5 technical controls, which I will talk about later on, just to give you a little overview of that. And again, that's little changes over the years, but fundamentally the scheme has very much remained the same over the last 12 years. What is it for? Why do we even have it? Nowadays, when dealing with clients, what we see is usually 2 main reasons for the scheme and for obtaining the Cyber Essentials badge. One is it is a good way to demonstrate your basic cyber hygiene. cyber hygiene, your sort of entry-level defense. Obviously, when you achieve Cyber Essentials, you receive a nice little badge that can go on your website, your emails, your marketing collateral, whatever it may be, and obviously make that visible to clients, prospective clients, anyone like that, to just demonstrate that, yes, we are doing the basics of cyber. The second one that has increased over the time and over the years has been almost a minimum requirement within sort of supply chain. So suppliers are starting to ask for it as part of due diligence. The UK government, if you're doing any kind of work as a supplier to local or central government, it has become a sort of a minimum requirement to have that, as well as obviously other schemes. But it is increasingly there as actually we need you to have it, not just we'd like you to have it. Next slide, please, Kerrie. So the scheme itself, and again, probably a lot of people already are well aware of this, but we have two levels to the scheme. We have what we call a Cyber Essentials Basic, or sometimes it's just referred to as Cyber Essentials, and we have a Cyber Essentials Plus. Now, anyone wanting to achieve Cyber Essentials, you have to start at the Basic. There is no shortcut to Plus. You have to go through the Basic. How do we do that? It's a self-assessed certification. There is a set of requirements that exist out there that you can review, and then you have to go through a questionnaire. There is often a bit of confusion around the term self-assessment here, because self-assessment, obviously, well, you assess yourself and that's fine. What's our role as auditors in there? It's a bit of a confusing one. It's a self-assessed questionnaire that is still assessed. It sounds weird, but what that means is the assessment itself, it's entirely on the accuracy of your answers and your honesty. So our job as an assessor here is not to go, you claimed you do X and Y, we want to see the evidence of that in sort of what you'd call a traditional audit. Our role as auditors is to see, have you actually answered it correctly? Have you said yes when it's supposed to be yes? Have you said no in the right places? And where you are asked to describe a process, describe how you achieve something, it is to determine, have you actually put an answer that demonstrates you know what you're talking about, and therefore you're probably not lying on your answer. So we're not here to say, is your answer accurate? It is more, is it correct? Important thing to note for this is pricing wise, it's always one of the big questions with anything nowadays. What's the cost of it? Well, the prices for a Cyber Essentials Basic are set by IASME, so they're predefined. They range from £320 to £600, and that is just to go through the certification. It's important to note, if you are looking to achieve Cyber Essentials Basic, those prices should be set out by whoever you go to. They are, if you want consultancy support or anything, that can be charged, but those prices are defined by IASME for the certification, and they should be explicitly set out in any kind of quotes or proposals you receive. Once you've achieved that, you have the option to go for Cyber Essentials Plus. Cyber Essentials Plus, it is effectively, that is when the true audit, the technical assessment comes into play. There is no new questionnaire to work through. It is the same question set. You don't even have to re-answer it. But what happens is a auditor will come along and perform a technical assessment designed to sort of assess and verify that not all of your controls, but a selection of those controls are in place. They are operating correctly. Pricing for that, there is no predefined pricing of that. It's consultancy work. It is, companies charge what they want to charge, and it's up to you to decide how you want to approach that. If you could move on, please, Kerrie. Just at a very high level, I just want to give you an overview of the 5 themes, just to give you a feel for what is being looked at here. So first of all, we've got firewalls, secure configuration, secure update management, user access control, malware protection. So obviously there's a high level there. That's what they are. And if we move on, Kerrie, what does that mean? Well, effectively, at a very high level, what do they expect you to do? Well, firstly, manage the boundaries between your devices and the internet. The internet being the key here, obviously, as the scheme is designed to protect you from common internet threats. Minimize risk on devices by configuring them appropriately. And again, when I say appropriately, it's all defined within the scheme. Ensure operating systems and software is kept up to date. It seems a bit of a no-brainer really, but again, there's some rules that you have to adhere to. Restrict and control who has access to what data and services. Again, obviously, customer data, sensitive data, company data is key. And obviously making sure that that's well protected and controlled is important. And finally, identify and prevent malicious software running on devices. Again, one of those kind of almost no-brainers in the world of cyber nowadays, having antivirus, having endpoint protection, things like that. So if we move on to the next slide, for those who have seen Cyber Essentials and been involved in it for a while, you'll have seen that over time the scheme is prone to change. It will change at the behest of NCSC and IASME. It is on a schedule, so you'll never see a change just randomly drop in. It's always kind of at the turn of a year, April wise, and it doesn't change every year. But in April 2026, the Willow scheme, which was the name attributed to the last one, has been replaced with Danzell as the latest scheme. And I guess probably what a lot of people on here are wondering who have done it, well, what's changed? Okay, if something has changed, clearly there's a name change, so what does that mean for us? So in Cyber Essentials, the basic, the questionnaire, what's changed? Well, not a huge amount is honestly my take on it. There's a lot of noise out there of people kind of talking about huge changes, and it's people need to be really well aware and ahead of everything. But if I'm being honest, I feel like that's a bit fear mongering. What actually has changed? Well, there's a few things that really are not going to apply to the vast majority of people obtaining Cyber Essentials. Scope definitions have changed. The rules and the guidance around scope definitions, I'd say sort of 90% of firms just assess their entire organization, so this doesn't apply to them. But certainly for larger organizations or more specialist ones, there is the ability to de-scope either entities or technical networks, things like that. So again, there's rules and guidance updated there. One of the interesting changes that doesn't have a material impact but is worth noting is at the end of your submission, someone of a senior level, usually board level, is required to attest that the answers are accurate. So all your answers are accurate and true, and then that gets submitted. There's been a subtle change that actually it's no longer just saying my answers are accurate. You're also now committing to maintaining the standard set out by Cyber Essentials. Obviously, Cyber Essentials is a once-a-year audit. So beyond, it's now changed obviously from saying on this day, all what I've said is correct. I'm now saying as a firm, I now say we're going to maintain that. So like I said, there's a material impact, not really, but it's an interesting point that people need to be aware of. But what, on a practical level, what's changed? There is only really two major changes. One is MFA for cloud services. Again, those people who have seen the scheme will know you are expected to have MFA on all your cloud services, your software as a service, things like that. That requirement has been there for the last 3 or 4 years. The only difference now is that's become an auto fail. It is now mandatory to have MFA on. Previously it was optional. It is now mandatory for admins and users. And the only other change is for the patching. Previously it was an auto fail to have unsupported software and OSs, which obviously makes sense. And then there was a requirement. There was a requirement to patch within 14 days on critical and high severity updates. That used to be a not quite a strict requirement. It is now a strict requirement. So previously you used to be able to pass with sort of a non-compliance and a note against it if you weren't patching within 14 days. Now you absolutely must do it. What about Cyber Essentials Plus? Nothing's really changed there. The audit has not changed. There are no new requirements in there. There's nothing new that we need to do. However, there is a slight change when an organization fails an audit. When you fail an audit previously, you used to receive what was needed. You kind of be told what was needed to remediate. You'd be expected to go away, redo that, and then obviously your auditor would come back and retest what failed. There is now a change to say, where you fail, not only do you have to retest the original sample of devices, a second sample must now be tested to kind of avoid selective fixing. Obviously, if we're seeing issues on a handful of devices, theoretically you can just go away and fix those devices. We're now expecting auditors to test another sample to make sure you haven't just fixed a few items. What does this all mean? I mean, the line at the bottom I've been saying to a lot of people, which is, sure, a lot of people are talking about big changes to the scheme. The way I look at it is, if you've been doing this correctly, and obviously correctly in quotes, but if you've been working through the scheme to kind of tick all the requirements up until this point, it should not cause you a headache on your renewal. You know, you should already have your MFA on cloud services. You should already be patching within 14 days. So if you've been doing it correctly up until now, you should not see any changes to that. If you want to move on now, Kerrie, I think I'm passing it back to you.
You are. Thank you. Thanks, Tristan. Appreciate that. So, so let's now understand where Cyber Essentials fits into the wider cyber risk management landscape, if you like. So first of all, as Tristan has said, this is a good basic level of cyber hygiene to achieve. And so if you've done nothing before when it comes to looking at your cyber risk management, we certainly think that you should start there. But I think it's important that if you're sitting there believing that once you've done that, that you are now fully covered from a cyber risk management perspective, unfortunately, that is, as it says on screen there, a common misconception. You know, you are going to have other vulnerabilities, or potentially have other vulnerabilities that sit outside of the scope of what Cyber Essentials is measuring you against. And the reason for that is, you know, Cyber Essentials is meant to be a one size fits all. You know, it's aimed at small businesses all the way through to large, and it's for everybody to try and achieve. And so they can't physically say, you know, you've got to look at all of these things, because again, one size won't fit all. But if that's where you want to start, that's okay. But just understand that breaches can occur outside of that scope, and so getting it is a good thing, but you're still going to have some other issues, or could have other issues outside of it. I think the other thing, depending on the industries and the sectors of the audience today, I think it's important to understand that if you are a regulated firm, particularly in the professional services world, the chances are that this isn't going to Cyber Essentials alone wouldn't satisfy the IC. If you were to have a breach. So if you had some personal data or client data that's been compromised, and it was reportable under UK GDPR, and you were investigated by the IC, I think the chances are that they're going to say, you know, look, you are a regulated firm, you hold a lot of confidential information, and while Cyber Essentials is that basic standard, really you should be doing more. And actually, there's evidence for this, because in the Tucker's case, which was a law firm that did have a ransomware attack, I think in about 2020, 2021, interestingly, the IC said that given the nature of their data, this is from the judgment, their security should have not only have met, but surpassed the basic requirements of Cyber Essentials. So I think anybody sat there within those industries that I've put on screen, if you are only relying on that and you have no other independent cyber risk management assurance beyond that scope, then I think you should perhaps revisit that, and obviously it'd be worth having a chat with us as well. And I think what's also interesting in one of the things that we're seeing when we talk about the scope is, if you think about threat actors, they need two things to be able to do their work. You know, they're trying to either deny you access to your systems, or they're trying to trick you or your clients into paying them money, or they're trying to steal your data so they can hold it ransom. And the method of, in order to do that, they've got to get into your systems. And what they're obviously looking to do is target the people that you employ, and poor behavior and poor business processes that would allow your staff to bypass those some security there. And also they target your supply chain, so be that customers or be that vendors or whatever. And of course, none of those things are within the scope of Cyber Essentials. And, you know, as I say, one of the things we're really seeing an increase in is supply chain attacks. So if that's not part of Cyber Essentials scope, then that's going to cause you issues potentially as we go further forward. To sort of expand upon that, it's to what we've done here on this slide is to say, well, over on the left-hand side, that's basics. Your basic foundation is 5 technical controls, as Tristan has said. I won't go through them again, but that is get the basics right. If you look at what's really required from a wider cyber risk management strategy, then first of all, it has to start at the board. So it's not just IT controls. It's going to require wider risk assessments. It's going to require policies. I think what's really important here is if anybody here thinks that technical controls can save you from all forms of cyber breach, then that's a misconception. Yeah. And think about it, Cyber Essentials is only technical controls. You've got to consider the people and the things that technology cannot control, and that's where you're going to need some form of policy to tell people what it is you do and don't want them to do, and they sit firmly outside of technical controls. And then also it comes down to whether you have independent oversight and assurance. Very often we see firms that if they're relying on perhaps on Cyber Essentials, they're only taking advice from their IT provider or their managed service provider. And well, first of all, they're marking their own homework, and so you've got no independence there, and then you've got nobody, and they're not really looking at the wider business. They're looking more at the technical controls. So really what you need is oversight that sits across the business and the IT provision, and then the assurance that yes, IT have understood the risks that they have and they're controlling those vulnerabilities, and the business from a wider cyber risk management strategy perspective has the right policies, has the right governance, and has assurance that they're doing the things that they should be doing. And when I get onto the next slide, you can see that the government and regulators are really pushing organizations down this road, because that's how you become far more resilient. And so we move on to the people and the culture. So it's security awareness training. I'm still surprised by how many organizations I speak to that aren't putting their staff through regular cyber awareness training. And not only is it a legal requirement under GDPR, but I would recommend it anyway. If about 85% of all cybercrime is a result of human beings doing something they shouldn't, i.e. clicking on a phishing email, then training will help them recognize what those threats look like and reduce the chance of them clicking on it in the first place. And you can then test the effectiveness of that training with simulated phishing attacks, which are incredibly valuable. We see really good results from that in the reduction of how many people will click on phishing emails once they've been trained properly. Obviously, the chances are, if you look at the government stats, last year 43% of businesses were the victims of cybercrime. The year before, 43%, exactly the same amount of businesses were the victims of cybercrime. Now that's interesting actually, because we're seeing companies spend money hand over fist on better cybersecurity technology, but yet the numbers are not coming down. And the numbers are not coming down typically because they haven't got proper oversight and assurance. But if you've almost got a 1 in 2 chance of being the victim of a cyber incident, you're going to need an incident response plan, and you're going to need to test it, i.e. if this happens, what are you going to do? Who are you going to go to? And have you checked that that would actually work in that instance? Very few businesses have these. Again, I'm really surprised at how many businesses don't. And the government stats back that up, that about 3/4 of businesses do not have an incident response plan. You really do need one. You don't want to make it up at the point of any breach. And obviously you need to have backup systems. Everybody, I find nowadays, has some form of backup, but actually you need to test that would withstand the cyber breach, and that you can recover quickly from it. And again, a lot of organizations have never tested whether that backup would withstand any form of ransomware attack. And I've already mentioned supply chain due diligence, so checking, putting security questionnaires and assessments on those that provide services to you or who have access to your systems, and we can assist with that if you don't know what to ask them and what answers you should be expecting from them. But the point is we're moving here from doing basics to resilience, being able to withstand it, and if we are the victim of it, that we can actually recover from it as well. But there are also, there's not just good reasons to do this from a business perspective for your own sake, but there are rising external expectations now. Regulators, I think some regulators have always been a little bit woolly around what they expect of organizations, but there's always been a focus on resilience and accountability, and specifically adherence to the law and confidentiality of client information, and definitely UK GDPR. And if we just looked at GDPR on its own, the requirements of that would dictate that you should be carrying out a risk assessment of the security of the data that you hold. You must be putting controls in that include people, technology, and governance. So if we draw that back to Cyber Essentials, the people and the governance aspects are not part of what Cyber Essentials would look at, yet GDPR, a legal requirement, does require you to look at it. So you can see there where there would be a gap. And obviously, the other thing is you should be testing and assessing constantly the effectiveness of those controls and have some evidence. So yes, Cyber Essentials will help you to demonstrate some of that evidence, but not all of it. The government last year brought out the Cyber Governance Code of Practice, which effectively stated that this is a board level responsibility, and that businesses must be carrying out risk assessments. They must have a strategy, they must be controlling people, they must have incident response plans and test them, and they should or must gain assurance and have oversight of their cyber risk. So again, it's not us saying it, it's not your regulator saying it, the government are pushing forward with it, because they know that if we don't do that, if you don't do that, the chances are you are going to be one of those 43% next year, and we don't want to be in those numbers. Insurers, I'm not going to go through that list, but if you're looking at cyber insurance, they're asking for more and more constantly because they don't want to pay out. So they will ask you to be doing far more. Again, you can see on there's things that fall outside of the Cyber Essentials remit. And again, it might be that people within your supply chain are asking you for more evidence as well. And so Cyber Essentials might help you with that, as Tristan said, or it might be they need you to go further. I'm just going to hand over to Tristan, because, you know, what are the practical next steps? So over to you, Tristan.
Thanks, Kerrie. I had a big long list of practical next steps, but actually I think what it really boils down to is looking at the frameworks. Okay, cyber frameworks exist, cyber frameworks and accreditations, these all exist, and they've existed for years for very good reason, because by and large they work. So my view is always, look, if you've achieved your Cyber Essentials and you're looking at, well, what do we do now? There's a wealth of cyber frameworks out there that can work for you, and it's a case of looking at where do we want to approach, where do we want to go. The key thing with cyber risk is always the word appropriate. I've listed some on there. We have things like your cyber assurance, which is an IASME scheme. The NCSC have their cyber assessment framework. Your well-known ones, your ISOs. NIST, they have a cybersecurity framework. SOC 2, if you're particularly concerned around things like client data. There's a wealth of areas where you can go. The key thing, though, is people look at these and they say, we're too small to achieve ISO accreditation. We're too small to achieve SOC. We don't want to actually go through the effort of achieving these and being audited. The simple answer is you don't have to. A lot of these frameworks, you work through them, you look through them. They just simply dictate what you should do to control your risk. They will talk about the key areas. They will talk about specific requirements. There is no requirement for you to say, well, actually, we want to be based on ISO, and we're going to have to do an audit at the end. You don't need to do that audit. The badge is there to demonstrate it externally, but for you internally to say, well, actually, yeah, we meet ISO, we meet NIST, we meet the CAF. Generally speaking, that's going to be enough for you to manage your internal risk. Once you go into those frameworks, once you've picked what works for you in your sector, your business, your size, to then work through those, look at those requirements. That will give you the perfect kind of list of where you need to go. Obviously, there's several, companies like Mitigo. We can help you work through those. We can help you create those. There's nothing to say you can pick and choose from them. Certain areas may be more important for you, in which case take some from one, take some from another, but it's all about using what's already out there. There's no need to reinvent the wheel when it already exists in some pretty good schemes out there.
Thanks, Tristan. I'm just conscious of time, so let's just look at the services that are available from Mitigo. We've talked about risk assessments, and those of you that have joined before, we always talk about starting with a risk assessment. So that's always the thing that we like to start with. But all the other things that we've talked about today are services that we offer. And I'm looking at the time and thinking, question-wise, you may have some questions, and I think what I'd like to do is I'm going to go to a poll, and questions we're happy to answer if you want to email in, or we can look at the messages that have come in via the chat system on here. But we're just going to go on to a quick poll, because it could be today that something has resonated and you might want to have a chat with us about things further. And so basically I would be interested in a consultation about A, Cyber Essentials, be that basic or plus, and we're happy to do that. B, exploring a roadmap beyond Cyber Essentials, or both. You might just want to have a general chat about your cyber risk management and what it could be that you should be doing more about, and how we could help. So if you're happy to share that information, that would be great. And whilst you're doing that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. In fact, I'm going to leave that up on screen for a second, actually, which is my contact details. If anybody wanted to email me or take my LinkedIn or phone me, LinkedIn details, then we'd be happy to have a chat about things. So as I say, I'm going to stop sharing that there, and that should bring me back onto screen. One thing I would say is just on the top right hand side, and I forgot to say this at the beginning because we had an issue with sharing our screens, but I know the slides are available, I believe, under the materials badge. And so I think if there's nothing else from you, Tristan, I think we'll sign off, and we'll try and respond to people with their questions in person, probably by an email. So sorry that we've run out of time. But Tristan, anything from you?
No, just to say thank you everyone for attending.
Excellent. And yep, thanks very much indeed. We'll see you again in episode 6. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye now.